Welcome to the presentation of a lecture from Gnostic Radio, a free public service from the Gnostic tradition of Samael Aun Beor. Gnosis is the root wisdom of the world's greatest knowledge. Gnosis is a universal teaching of practical science, whose goal is absolute liberation from suffering and the complete development of the human being. This lecture is one of hundreds available as free downloads, podcasts, or transcriptions. Our lectures range in topic and complexity in order to address the many needs of humanity. We invite you to browse our library of lectures to find teachings that suit you. Twice a month, Gnostic Radio broadcasts live and includes a free online classroom allowing listeners to see images, read related scriptures, and ask questions of the speaker. To learn how to participate, visit gnosticradio.org. Gnostic Radio is a service of Glorianne Publishing, a non-profit organization. The lectures and radio broadcasts have been made possible by the financial support of listeners like you. Most spiritual schools recommend a donation of $10 to $20 per lecture. To make a donation, visit gnosticradio.org. Now, with heartfelt wishes for the end of suffering for all creatures, we begin the lecture. May all beings be happy. Welcome to the next lecture in our Healthy Spirituality series. Today's focus is going to be on understanding the health risks associated with genetically modified foods, or GMOs. As I was pondering the next lecture that we should do in this Healthy Spirituality series, I thought of so many other topics I could have spoken about. One of the big ones is cancer and illnesses that we're facing a lot these days, and alternative treatments to it. But before I could do that, I realized I needed to first explain, why are we getting so sick? Why is there such a prevalence of so many more illnesses today than ever before? So I realized that a lot of what's going on is happening because of the foods that we're putting into our bodies. And the sad reality of what's happening is it's not just food anymore. Food is not what we thought of as food 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. Food is becoming commercial, and food is becoming a product to make money off of. And more what we're seeing is foods in supermarkets that are being genetically altered. And the reality is, because they're being genetically altered, they're doing something to our own genes. And what is that? How many of us are even aware that that's happening? So when I really pondered this next lecture, I realized that that's where I needed to start, is what are we putting into our bodies and what is it doing to our bodies? So my goal for today's lecture is to have you understand a little bit more about GMOs, about what's going on in our food supply currently. All right, so I have some good news for some of you listening. Some of you live in countries that actually understand that GMOs are not the best solution to feed the population. Most developed nations actually do not consider GMOs to be safe. In nearly 50 countries around the world, there are significant restrictions or outright bans on the production and sale of GMOs. In the U.S., the government has approved GMOs based on studies conducted by the same corporations that created them and profit from their sale. Increasingly, Americans are taking matters into their own hands and choosing to opt out of the GMO experiment. Although the list is constantly changing as to which countries are banning GMOs, the seeds and or food ingredients, the European Union on the most part, the United Kingdom, Norway, Luxembourg, Austria, Germany, France, Hungary, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Greece, with the recent exception of GMO potatoes being introduced, and Ireland are having restrictions on GMOs. They're also banned in Australia, but that's been shifting recently because of pressure from New Farm, Monsanto, and the Aussies are not happy about this. Also in New Zealand, the same is true. Elsewhere in the world, in many parts of the world, including Saudi Arabia, Algeria, Brazil, Paraguay, Peru, China, Japan, Thailand, the Philippines, Fiji, Sri Lanka, American Samoa, Cook Islands, Kiribati, I don't know where that is, Federated States of Micronesia, Marshall Islands, Nauru, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Solomon Islands, Tonga, Tuvalu, and Vanuatu are all having bans on GMOs. So now, in Canada, the debate is still underway. Government scientists concerned about human health impacts complained that they were being pressured to approve the GMO milk hormone, otherwise known as RGBH, which is injected into cows to increase milk supply. They testified that the drug maker Monsanto offered them a bribe of over $1 million to approve it. They also reported that their research study documents were stolen from a locked file cabinet in a government office. So there's a lot of underhanded stuff happening in reference to getting GMOs approved. Here in the United States, where several of our largest corporations have a vested financial interest in the use of GMOs, the proliferation of misinformation has resulted in very little progress. Maryland has banned genetically engineered fish. North Dakota and Montana filed bans on genetically engineered wheat. Burlington, Vermont declared a moratorium on genetically engineered food. Boulder, Colorado banned genetically engineered crops. The California counties of Mendocino, Trinity, and Marin, and the San Juan County of Washington State have all successfully banned GM crops. Meanwhile, Monsanto actually sued Vermont and Connecticut's GMO labeling measures into silence. And with the help of multiple large U.S. food manufacturers who rely heavily on genetically engineered corn and soy, spent almost $46 million to confuse California voters into narrowly defeating a GMO labeling proposition in November 2012, known as Proposition 37. As of 2013, after the FDA denied more than 1 million signatures in a national petition to label GMOs, more than 24 states have begun working on statewide labeling measures. So if you are lucky enough to live in one of those countries or in one of the states I just mentioned, great, good for you. Maybe we need to move, I'm not sure. But as of right now, New York does not have GMO labeling laws, and it's a serious concern that we should be having. So here's the question. Which one do you want, an American kiss or a French kiss? Because Hershey's Kisses, if you buy it here in the US, it probably contains GMO ingredients. If you get it in France, on the other hand, no GMOs allowed. So a question is, why should we feed our bodies well? Why is this lecture even important? Why are we having this here at our school? It's because the truth is, in order to perform our spiritual work, we need our bodies to be able to be in optimal health. We need them to be able to produce the results we want. If we're sick and suffering from the side effects or the illnesses that GMOs cause, what kind of work are you going to be able to do? If we put garbage in our body, what do we expect to get out of our bodies? So this is really why I chose this topic. It's because in order for us to be able to accomplish all the great things we talk about in these other lectures, in our books, in these teachings, we need to have our bodies healthy. So I want to, here's a quote from the Master Samael Aun from Fundamentals of Gnostic Education. He says, "The human organism, as an authentic factory, transforms dense or crude elements into refined vital substances. The foods that we ingest into our stomach pass through multiple transformations and refinements, culminating in that semi-solid, semi-liquid substance mentioned by Paracelsus with the name of enseminis, or entity of semen. Thus, this is how that flexible, ductile, transparent liquid, that sperm, retains in itself all the seeds of life in potentiality." So if food is ultimately transformed into enseminis, into our semen, the food that we put into our body, if it's weak, manipulated, empty, genetically modified, how strong is our seed going to be? What are we going to be able to produce with that seed? So that food is producing something weak or strong within our bodies. And every day we have the choice to choose what it is that we put there. So let's start with a really basic question. What are GMOs? Other names for GMOs, or genetically modified organisms, are genetic engineering, GE, or genetic modification, GM, which are one and the same. GMOs are growing life forms that have their DNA chemically altered. Okay, the first genetically modified food was a tomato. It had a delayed ripening ability, which has given rise to an entire industry of genetically modified foods. Genetically engineered seeds first hit commercial farm fields in 1996. That means we have been part of this experiment since 1996. How many of you actually knew you've been eating genetically modified foods since then? Okay, it has become the largest and most subsidized of U.S. crops. So today, most non-organic U.S. corn, soy, cotton, sugar beets are genetically modified. And combined, they provide a vast portion of the sweeteners, fats, additives used by food manufacturers and nearly all of the feed used by the meat industry. That means if we're eating conventional foods, non-organic foods, boxed foods, chances are you're eating genetically modified food. So some people say, but, isn't this the same as grafting trees or breeding animals, hybridizing seeds? I mean, that's been going on for years. Is this the same thing? Well, with genetic engineering, scientists can actually breach species barriers set up by nature. Nature has barriers, right? But the scientists say, well, let's try and breach this animal with this animal or this plant with this animal. So what they've done, for example, is they spliced fish genes into tomatoes. Like, why do we need fish genes in tomatoes? Okay. The results are plants or animals with traits that would be virtually impossible to obtain with natural processes, such as crossbreeding or grafting. In traditional breeding, it's possible to mate a pig with another pig and get a new variety, right? But it's not possible to mate a pig with a potato, right? Or mate a pig and a mouse. It's not possible. But that's the kind of stuff scientists are doing. Even when species that may seem to be closely related do succeed in breeding, the offspring are usually infertile. For example, if you take a horse and you mate it with a donkey, the offspring, a mule, is sterile. Okay. So the master Samael Aumbeor spoke against grafting. Genetic modification in this sense wasn't around in his time, but he did speak against grafting, saying that it doesn't harness the solar light. So imagine what effects genetic engineering is having on the foods that we eat. If grafting was not good, what is genetic engineering doing to it? So how exactly do scientists do genetic engineering? So because living organisms have these natural barriers to protect themselves against the introduction of DNA from different species, genetic engineers actually have to find ways to force the DNA from one organism into another. And these methods include using viruses or bacteria to infect animal or plant cells with the new DNA, or they coat DNA into tiny metal pellets and then fire it with a special gun into the cells, or they inject the new DNA into fertilized eggs with a very fine needle. Also using electric shocks to create holes in membrane covering sperm and then forcing the new DNA into the sperm through these holes. So that's how a lot of our food supply is being done currently, okay, in one of these ways. And to help you better understand it, cartoons are always great. So here's a simple way, because I know some of the scientific stuff could get confusing. So this is how they do it, basically. If we look at slide 9, they isolate a gene with a desired trait. Okay, so for example, BT, okay, Bacillus thuringiensis, is a bacterium which produces a protein that kills specific insects. All right, so They choose that desired trait. And then they change the gene so it's going to work in the plant. So they actually remove the certain length of the DNA, that part of that gene that produces that protein. Okay. And then they prepare the plant cells or tissues. And what they do is they transform plant cells using the gene gun or bacteria infection method. Okay, so they use one of those ways in order to get that gene in there. And then they regrow the plant cells. They regrow the cells to plant via tissue culture or cloning. So they actually clone the plants, and that's how they grow it. So that's the basic way of doing genetic engineering. But what I want you to see, I don't know if you noticed as I was going through the slides, there's a part on the bottom that says step that contains scientific uncertainties and risk potentials. All right, look at out of those 5 steps, each of those steps, out of those 4 steps, basically each of those steps contains uncertainties and risk potentials. All right, so there is a reason that this is dangerous, is because they're not sure exactly what's going to happen or how it's going to affect the plants. So now gene insertion, by doing it, shooting the genes from a gene gun into a plate of cells, or by using bacteria to invade the cells with foreign DNA, that's fine. You can leave it. Thank you. That's good. The altered cell is then cloned to a plant. All right, so like, as I was just saying, these processes create actually massive collateral damage, causing mutations in hundreds or thousands of locations throughout the plant's DNA. They're playing with the plant's DNA. You know, when God created us, the DNA is in certain places for a reason, right? Now the scientists are coming and shooting other DNA into these plants. What is it doing to their DNA? So the natural genes can be deleted or permanently turned on or off, and hundreds may change their level of expression. Scientists basically don't even know what's going to happen by doing these experiments. So all those levels, all those steps of the genetic modification actually have many uncertainties. And what happens is the inserted gene is often rearranged. It may transfer from the food into our body cells or into the DNA of bacteria inside of us, becoming part of our own DNA or changing our structure of our DNA. And the GM protein produced by the gene may have unintended properties or effects. The truth is they don't know because they haven't done enough human studies. We are actually the study, the experiment. So let's talk about on slide 15, what combinations have actually been tried by scientists. So, since it's possible for plants to be engineered with genes taken from bacteria, viruses, insects, animals, or even humans, scientists have done some interesting combinations, such as putting spider genes inserted into goat DNA, because they were hoping that inside the goat milk they would contain spider web protein that they could use in bulletproof vests. Okay, or cow genes turned pig skins into cow hides. Jellyfish genes lit up pigs' noses in the dark. Arctic fish genes gave tomatoes and strawberries tolerance to frost. Okay, so these are just some of the trials that they have tried. Some more field trials have included corn engineered with human genes, sugarcane engineered with human genes, corn engineered with jellyfish genes, tobacco engineered with lettuce genes, rice engineered with human genes, corn engineered with hepatitis virus genes, potatoes that glowed in the dark when they needed watering. Hey, that's kind of handy, huh? Human genes inserted into corn to produce spermicide. So these are some of the things that scientists are playing with. Okay, and if anybody's shaking their head, I'm glad, because, yeah, it is weird. So before the FDA decided to allow GMOs into foods without labeling, FDA scientists had repeatedly warned that GM foods can create unpredictable, hard to detect side effects, including allergies, toxins, new diseases, and nutritional problems. They used long-term safety studies, but they were ignored. Okay? So scientists were warning about it. Who overruled the scientists? The man in charge of FDA policy, Michael Taylor. He was Monsanto's former attorney and later their vice president. The White House under George H.W. Bush had instructed the FDA to promote the biotechnology industry. And so the FDA created a new position for Michael Taylor. As a result of the policy that he oversaw, if Monsanto and others want to put a GM crop on the market, they don't even have to tell the FDA about it. GM companies do participate in a voluntary and highly superficial consultation process with the FDA, in which they offer just summary data and their own conclusions of safety. So the same companies that are promoting these GM products are the ones that are doing the safety trials. The Obama administration has reinstalled Taylor at the FDA as the U.S. food safety czar. So don't you all feel safe? The guy in charge of our food safety is an ex-Monsanto vice president. The agency, now the FDA declares, after they put Michael Taylor in charge, the FDA declares GMOs are no different than regular food. The agency is not aware of any information showing that foods derived by these new methods differ from other foods in any meaningful or uniform way. This sentence in the 1992 FDA policy, which still stands today, is the reason why GM crops are on the market. On the basis of the statement, the FDA said no safety testing was necessary. If Monsanto or the other biotech food companies say their food is safe, the FDA has no further questions. Okay, does anybody see a problem here? All right, if we look at these penguins, who is actually responsible for GMO safety testing? Monsanto's pointing to the USDA, FDA is pointing to USDA. I mean, who's in charge? And that's the sad reality of where we stand right now. All right, so big question. Are genetically modified foods safe to eat? And the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, AAEM, doesn't think so. The Academy reported that several animal studies indicate serious health risks associated with GM food, including infertility, immune problems, accelerated aging, faulty insulin regulation, and changes in major organs and the gastrointestinal system. The AAEM asked physicians to advise patients to avoid GM foods. Now just take a look at some of those health risks. Do any of those ring bells of things that you see happening in our society of people suffering more of these kind of having more infertility and more people having to do infertility treatments, more problems with digestive disorders, allergies, asthma? I mean, is this making, some of you may be suffering it as well. A lot of people are suffering, so many various allergies, food allergies, having problems with their intestinal and gastrointestinal tracts. There's a reason for it. GMOs are inherently unsafe. They are genetically modified organisms where genes are taken from one species, right, like bacteria or virus, and forced into the DNA of other species, like soybeans and corn plants. Irrespective of what particular gene you insert, the very process of creating a GMO results in massive collateral damage in the plant, which can increase toxins, allergens, carcinogens, and anti-nutrients. So inherently, just by the process that scientists need to do in order to make them, creates this massive uncertainty. You're playing with the DNA of the organism. Now, how much of our food is actually coming from GMOs? Okay, so this is based on United States, okay? The GMO content of the following basic foods is indicated by percent of total crops in the United States. Soy, 91 to 93% of all of our conventional soy is genetically modified. Cotton, 71 to 93% of our cotton, 86% of our corn, 90% of our canola, and 95% of our sugar beets. Also, Quest brand tobacco, 100% genetically modified. Alfalfa, which recently was approved by the FDA, is widely fed to animals to produce meat and milk. Kentucky bluegrass, recently approved by the FDA, even more widely fed to animals to produce meat and milk. Already an invasive grass in its natural state, it will spread even more uncontrollably and with genetically engineered resistance to Roundup. So more and more they're approving more and more crops that are genetically modified. Hawaiian papaya, more than 50% of Hawaiian papaya is genetically modified, and a small percentage of zucchini and crookneck squash are genetically modified. So what are other sources of GMOs? Now, all corn and canola oils, if they're not organic, they're probably GMO. Soy protein, soy lecithin, cornstarch, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, meat, eggs, dairy products from animals that have eaten GM feed, and the majority of the GM corn and soy is used to feed the animals that we eat. Dairy products from cows injected with RBGH, a GM hormone. Food additives including enzymes, flavorings, and processing agents. Sweeteners such as aspartame, NutraSweet, and rennet used to make hard cheeses. Honey and bee pollen that may have GM sources of pollen. Okay, when you're looking at this list, do you see a lot of foods that you're eating, maybe even taking some vitamins or supplements that may be containing these GM sources? Slide 26 will make your mouth open wide, actually. When I saw slide 26, these are typical GMO foods, which are at-risk ingredients. Unless they're 100% organic or certified organic, you are probably having GMO ingredients. 80% of our conventional processed food is currently genetically modified. 80%. Okay, so when you go out to restaurants, when you go out and you buy foods in boxes, cereals, for example, bread, crackers, cookies, frozen yogurt, mayonnaise, ketchup, peanut butter, meat substitutes, milk, cheese, butter, and ice cream. Just take a really hard look at slide 26, because when I started this lecture, some of you were probably saying, I don't eat genetically modified foods. After taking a look at this slide, can you honestly say that? One trip to a restaurant and you will be eating a lot of genetically modified foods, because it's in everything, almost in everything. 80% of our processed foods contain GMOs. So, unless you're buying 100% organic, you're probably eating GMOs. Update on frankenfish or GM salmon. All right. In one of my previous lectures, I spoke about this. The biotechnology industry says it has a genetically engineered a fish that grows twice as fast as at the normal rate. So it can get to the market sooner and make more money faster. But this dangerous lab experiment is all hype and full of downsides to consumers, salmon growers, and the environment. If approved, this GE salmon would be the first transgenic animal allowed into our food supply. It's also unlikely that it would have to be labeled, so you might not even know you're eating it. The FDA doesn't even do its own testing of genetically engineered animals. It relies on information provided by the company that wants approval. And because GE salmon are being considered as a new animal drug, the process isn't focused on what happens to people who eat genetically engineered animals. So on top of the health concerns posed by raising salmon in crowded factory fish farms that rely on antibiotics and other chemicals, the FDA could be adding the unknown risk of GE salmon to the mix. So here in this classroom, we just enjoyed some salmon, right? Some gravlax as part of our lunch. If this fish gets approved, you may not even know that you're eating a transgenic animal, an animal that has been altered, whose genes have been altered to grow faster and fatter. So I'm going to urge all of you who are listening to this lecture and who are sitting here before me, we need to let the FDA know that we do not approve of genetically engineered salmon. They have given us till April 26th, 2013, to voice our opinion. Now, whether or not they're going to listen is another story. But I urge you all, on slide 28, there's a link to go to sign a petition to tell the Food and Drug Administration not to approve GE salmon. And if the Obama administration insists on improving this genetically engineered fish, it should at least be labeled so we know. Because this is happening, guys, right now. Okay, this is March. Next month, they're going to be deciding this for us. And if this happens, okay, they have these fish in farms. What's going to stop this? What happens if there's an escapee? What's going to happen to the wild population of salmon? How is this going to affect? We can't go backwards. Once we start playing with animals like this, we cannot go back. Because if these animals get out, they're going to change the population of fish as we know it. Please, I urge you to go. Your homework today, I'm going to give you one homework assignment. This is it. Sign a petition. Let your friends know about it. Because this is going to really change food as we know it. And that gravlax that you just ate as we know it. So let's talk about how this all started. Now that I've got you good and scared and your attention, how did this start? And what crops actually started it? The first GM crop that we're going to look at was called the Flavor Savor tomato. And it was engineered to have a longer shelf life. Calgene, its producer, was the only company to give the FDA raw feeding study data. But they tried to do a study with rats, but there was a problem. The rats refused to eat the tomato. Okay? So that was the first problem. Many animals actually avoid GM feed when they're given a choice. Farmers, students, reporters, and scientists report that when given a choice, a large variety of animals actually avoid eating the GM foods. These include cows, pigs, geese, squirrels, elk, deer, raccoons, buffalo, mice, and rats. One farmer, actually, he read about squirrels avoiding GMOs in the book Seeds of Deception. So he wanted to try this experiment on his own. He purchased GM and non-GM ears of corn. And he left them in a wood shop, waiting to do the experiment in winter. But he forgot about it. And then when later he came across the bags of corn, the mice had actually done the experiment for him because all of the non-GMO ears of corn were eaten and the bag of GMO corn was untouched. So the one on the left is actually the non-GMO corn. And look at that. They actually went and they ate it all up. The mice went after it. GM corn, they didn't want it. Now, animals have good instinct, right? They know what's good for them. They know what they should eat and not eat, for the most part. Why aren't they eating this? Let's take a look at the Bt pesticide, or Bt toxin. As mentioned, there's a gene from soil bacteria that creates a poison, which kills specific insects. In its natural form, it is used in organic and conventional agriculture and forestry. Scientists take the bacterial gene, make changes so it will work in plants, and then put it into the plant DNA. Now, every cell of the plant creates this toxin. The reason why it is allowed in our food is because of the assumption that it has a history of safe use. They further assume that the protein is destroyed during digestion and that it wouldn't interact with mammals or humans in any case. Mammals and humans do not even have receptor cells, so they claim it would just pass right through the system if not digested. Problem is, in reality, these assumptions are not true. In reality, people do react to BT spray. In fact, the label on the BT spray bottle warns people not to consume it. Several studies show reactions among farmers, including antibody responses to BT in the blood. BT toxin also survives digestion. When fed to mice, the lower part of the small intestines suffered tissue damage. There were fragments of cells, damaged cells, and potentially precancerous growth. Further, mice developed an immune response as if they had been fed cholera toxin. They also develop an adjuvant response. This means they are sensitized to other compounds that they never reacted to before, as in the case of the condition called multiple chemical sensitivity, which a lot of people actually are suffering from these days. So their assumption that BT wouldn't survive digestion is false, because it does, and it's creating holes within the intestines of the animals. When they did an aerial BT spray for gypsy moth infestation in the Pacific Northwest, about 500 people reported allergic reactions, and some had to be hospitalized. They complained of eyes, nose, throat, respiratory irritation, skin irritation, itching, swelling, allergic rhinitis, fever, altered consciousness, and even seizures. And this is just from BT spray, okay, for gypsy moth infestation. I don't know about you, but I'd rather live with the gypsy moth. Farm workers actually showed immune responses to the BT. The BT in crops is probably far more dangerous than the spray. Now, you saw the reaction that people had to the spray, right? 500 health complaints in just one spraying. Now they're injecting it into the genes itself, and it's way more dangerous because it's in every single kernel that we eat. The spray biodegrades or can be washed off, but when it's in the GM crops, it's produced in every single cell and cannot be washed off or degraded. In fact, it is produced in concentrations that can be 3,000 to 5,000 times more than in the spray form. So once they inject it into the cells of the corn, think about that. It's 3,000 to 5,000 times stronger than the spray that they use on the crops. Also, the natural BT pesticide molecule has a safety catch on it, keeping it inactive. Once it gets inside an alkaline stomach of an insect, the safety catch is removed, and then the BT destroys the stomach lining of the pest and kills it. It actually sort of explodes the insides of the pest. And when scientists prepare the BT gene for plants, however, they change it so that the molecule no longer has the safety catch on it. It's immediately active. This is also a form that is likely to be more toxic to humans. There's no safety catch anymore. So as soon as we ingest it, that means it could be going into our intestines. Further, the amino structure of the BT toxin has a section that is identical to a known allergen, and it's actually failed allergy tests recommended by the World Health Organization. So what does this all mean? Well, when mice ate BT corn, multiple immune system responses were had by the mice, and this was a study by the government of Italy. Also, when mice ate BT or Roundup Ready corn, the more corn they ate, the less babies they had, and the smaller the babies were. Also, in a study by Monsanto made public because of a lawsuit, rats fed BT corn developed signs of liver and kidney toxicity. These included kidney inflammation and kidney lesions, decreased kidney weight. The latter symptom is typically related to blood pressure problems. They also developed increased basophils, which are related to allergies, increased lymphocytes or white blood cells, which are part of the immune system, indicating a reaction to infection or possibly disease. A 10% increase in blood sugar and decreased immature red blood cells by 50%, which might indicate anemia. And this was a study done by Monsanto. Okay. 2 other rat studies by Monsanto also showed signs of toxicity. One was with BT corn and the other was with their Roundup Ready spray. A German farmer says that a variety of Bt corn caused 12 of his cows to die and others to fall sick. The corn producer, Syngenta, reimbursed the farmer for part of his losses, but they did not admit fault. About 25 farmers in the Midwest claimed that their pigs and cows became sterile when they were feeding them certain varieties of Bt corn. Some pigs developed false pregnancies and gave birth to bags of water. On one farm, the corn that apparently caused the pigs to become sterile was later fed to the cows, and they too became sterile. The reports on animal sterility were not followed up with tests by authorities, just denial that the problem was feed-related. In the Philippines, villagers living adjacent to a Bt cornfield developed serious health problems while the corn was pollinating. Over days, symptoms spread from those closest to the field to those further away. And these symptoms included skin reactions, intestinal reactions, and fever. A man who went into the field to investigate had a particularly serious reaction. His whole face swelled up, and he had trouble breathing. The next year, the same Bt corn was planted in 4 other villages, and the mysterious disease reoccurred in each, only during the time of pollination. The first village also reported death of 9 horses, 4 buffaloes, 37 chickens, and 5 unexplained human deaths after consuming the corn. Is this all coincidence? A Canadian study found the Bt toxin from Monsanto's corn in the blood of 93% of pregnant women tested. It was also in the blood of 80% of their unborn fetuses. This overturns the notion that Bt toxin is destroyed during digestion. It is not. And since it was in the blood of fetuses with undeveloped blood-brain barriers, the impact on development is unknown, but possibly serious. A February 2012 study in the Journal of Applied Toxicology found that the Bt toxin from corn also broke open holes in the walls of human cells, causing leakage. The authors suggested that this may be the same way that Bt toxin kills insects. It might also be a causative factor in digestive disorders and permeable intestines. On slide 46, French researchers' studies, this is a recent study actually, published in the U.S. Journal of Food and Chemical Toxicity, raised many concerns. The study surely counts as the most ambitious and comprehensive safety assessment of GMOs ever concluded. It involved 200 rats and spanned 2 years, the life expectancy of this particular rat used. And what they found was that rats exposed to trace amounts, now we're talking about just little amounts of Monsanto Roundup, weed killer, and GM corn, developed mammary tumors, severe liver and kidney damage as early as 4 months in males, and 7 months for females. 50% of males and 70% of females died prematurely, compared with only 30% and 20% in the control group. Now, if you look at slide 46, it's quite disturbing because the tumors are quite large. And, of course, many people were arguing this study, citing, trying to find fault with it. Because before that, actually, 90 days was the standard for a study to be made. And interestingly enough, the tumors didn't start till after the 90 days. So Monsanto and these other companies would say, oh yeah, we did studies. We did 90-day studies. That's like sort of the norm for their studies. But once you do longer studies, you find the more serious effects occur. Because these happen after 4 months, right? So that's some of the harsh reality of the Bt corn. Let's talk about Bt cotton now. In India, thousands of laborers picking cotton and working in cotton ginning factories developed allergic reactions when handling the Bt cotton. This didn't happen when they had non-Bt varieties. There are many laborers who don't go to work unless they first taken an antihistamine now. That's how strong their allergies are. Thousands, as a result, after BT cotton is harvested, shepherds take their flocks into the area to graze on the BT plants. And as a result, thousands of sheep died. This is a normal practice. In India, this is what they would normally do. After the cotton was harvested, they would take their animals to feed in the fields. Within 5 to 7 days, 1 out of 4 sheep died. Medical investigators found black patches in the intestines, liver, and bile ducts. The shepherds reported nasal discharge, sense of dullness, depression, diarrhea, and coughing among the sheep as a result of eating this BT cotton. Indian buffaloes in Haryana, India. Most refused to eat BT cottonseed and oil cake, first of all. But they found once they ate them, they had prolapsed uteruses, premature deliveries, common abortions, and conception age advanced up to 2 years. Reduction in milk and fat content, taste quality, skin problems, and sudden deaths among adults and calves. The buffalo in Warangal, India, those who grazed on BT cotton plants, got sick, unconscious for 2 to 3 days, and caused 13 deaths. Now, I need you to understand that before this BT cotton was introduced, they didn't have these occurrences happening in their villages. And India, being, an agrarian, I can't say the word right now, a farming country, was, they rely on this. They rely on their animals, on their fields, on their cotton production. And so now, many were losing everything that they had as a result of using this. Also, 26 sheep and goats died as a result of eating the cotton plants. Just going back to India for a second, I don't know if you're aware of, but there's about 125,000 to 250,000 Indian farmers that have committed suicide over the past 20 years because of one of the reasons being because of GMO crops being planted. Monsanto, they have what are called suicide seeds, and what they do is it makes people have to buy the seeds every year. And many farmers are working, just year to year just to make a living. And what happened was every year they have to buy. In the old days, what would you do? You would take a seed and you would use the seed from last year for next year's crops. But now Monsanto created certain seeds that you couldn't do that anymore. Every year they would die. And you'd have to buy new seed. Or the seeds would only grow with their sprays. They've created a business of it. Whereas for thousands of years, farmers just kept saving seed and producing seed and using their seed, right? It was that's not what's happening anymore. And thousands and thousands and thousands of people are committing suicide, even drinking the same pesticides. That's how they're committing suicide. The same pesticides that they've been putting into their fields, they're committing suicide too, because they feel a helplessness, a desperation. What their families have done for generations and generations is no longer a way for them to have a living for them and their families. And one of the things that have been blamed is GM crops. So if you want to find out more about this, there's a lot about it, a lot of reports and studies that have been made about it. But, you can imagine how you would feel, what devastation you would feel if all you have is what you grow and the animals that you have. And all of a sudden, they start dying. And all of a sudden, you're suffering all these illnesses that you've never before suffered. So this is a great problem and one of the problems of genetically modified foods. So another big genetically modified crop is soy. What do we know about GM soy impact on health? Actually, very little because there are so few studies. But here are some findings to date. we do know that soon after GM soy was introduced into the UK, soy allergies skyrocketed by 50%. Okay. Another thing, when mice were fed GM soy for 8 months, they had a profound drop in the amount of digestive enzymes produced by their pancreas. If there were less protein digesting enzymes in the gut, then proteins from other foods may take longer to digest, leaving more time for an allergic reaction to take place. So that means that, less enzymes in the stomach, food was staying in the stomach longer. It's not properly digesting. It's not properly being moved through the digestive system. So more time for allergic reactions to be created. If you're someone who suffers a lot of food allergies, this is one of the reasons right here. Thus, if GM soy interferes with human digestion, like it apparently does with mice, it might increase allergies to proteins from many different foods, not just soybeans. Okay, so not only is it creating problems with the soybeans, but with other proteins that we eat. And now what this means is it might increase allergies. The impaired digestion just mentioned might increase allergic response to many proteins. The new allergen created by the GM process might cause reactions. There's up to a 7-fold increase in the allergen trypsin inhibitor in cooked soy. Once you cook soy, you have 7-fold increase in this allergen. Okay. GM soy has higher levels of herbicide residue, which may also trigger reactions. The Roundup Ready protein has properties of a known allergen as well. And in addition, since the soy trans gene transfers to human gut bacteria and continues to produce this protein, it is possible that we have an allergen being continuously produced by our own intestinal flora. That means it just stays in our intestines. Okay, it's just staying there and it's just increasing more allergens in our body. If you're eating tofu and soy milk and all these soy products and it's not organic, you're eating GM soy. Okay, and these are some of the side effects of what could be happening in your own body. Mice that were fed Roundup Ready soy for 8 months showed significant changes in the liver, which is a main detoxifier for the body. The liver cells were damaged or misshapen, and there was altered gene expression. Higher metabolic activity also suggests that the liver was reacting to a toxic insult. Okay, so it's affecting our liver as well. And now slide 57 is going to be disturbing, because rats that were fed GM soy showed changed color in their testicles, as well as changes in the cell structure. Okay? So it is affecting us, not only in our organs, okay, in men's testicles, there are being changes. What does that mean? We talk a lot about working with our sexual energy, right, in these studies. These foods are actually altering the seed, right? They're altering our organs. So what is this doing? What kind of work are we going to be able to create with our body if we keep eating these types of foods? I mean, it's truly an experiment that is going on with our own bodies right now. The testicles of mice fed GM soy had altered structures and function, which influenced sperm development. This might influence fertility or offspring health as well. In a small follow-up study, when they tried to mate the offspring from the GM group, they would not conceive. Okay, so for all of you men right there sitting there, I'm sure you're feeling very sensitive about this subject right now because you don't want anybody messing with certain parts of your body. This is one of them. Seriously, internally, externally. And they're finding that the rats that were fed GM soy also had changes in the uterus and the ovaries. When I read this and I really reflected upon this, it made me feel a profound sadness. Because we're supposed to be working, right, with our sexual energy, with our ovaries, with our testicles, with all that energy that we're creating. What is this doing to us? What is this creating in us? I mean, we already have so many obstacles, right, in our path, in our work. It's already hard to do our work every day, our spiritual work. Now they're going to the core of who we are, of what we are, of our bodies. So what effects is this having in our spiritual progress as well? It's quite scary. 5 years after the rat study, other Russian scientists with the Russian Academy of Sciences reported that when they fed hamsters GM soy for over 2 years, by the third generation, most lost the ability to have babies. They also suffered lower growth, a high mortality rate, and some had hair growing in their mouths, which is a rare condition. Why do you need hair in your mouth? Quite scary, isn't it? So the growing evidence of harm from GMOs, remember we started with the question, are GMOs safe? Well, GMO soy linked to allergic reactions, BT corn and cotton linked to allergies. GMOs may make you allergic to non-GM foods. GMOs linked to liver problems. GMOs linked to reproductive problems and infant mortality. BT crops linked to sterility, disease, and death. And functioning GM genes remain inside of you. So I think we answered that safety question. You know, unlike safety evaluations for drugs, there are no human clinical trials of GM foods. The only published human feeding experiment revealed that the genetic materials inserted into GM soy transfers into bacteria living inside of our intestines and continues to function. This means that long after we stop eating GM foods, we may still have their GM proteins produced continuously inside of us. So, this could mean if the antibiotic gene inserted into most GM crops were to transfer, it could create super diseases resistant to antibiotics. Have you noticed that it seems like people have to take more antibiotics? And like antibiotics don't work the same way. I mean, I know like a few of my friends' kids, it seems like they're constantly trying antibiotic after antibiotic for an ear infection, or this antibiotic's not working. Why is that? It's because we already have so many antibiotics inside of us through the food we eat. And not only that, but because of these GM crops. If the gene that creates Bt toxin in GM corn were to transfer, it might turn our intestinal bacteria into living pesticide factories. So just think of our intestines as pesticide factories. So many healthcare professionals are becoming aware of the dangers of GMOs and are prescribing non-GMO diets to their patients. Allergist Dr. John Boyle says, I used to test for soy allergies all the time, but now that soy is genetically engineered, it is so dangerous that I tell people never to eat it unless it says organic. The campaign will distribute patient education material through practitioners. So more and more people are saying, the doctors are saying the first thing they'll do is get people off GM foods because of the effects. But as we saw, that even if we stop eating GM foods, they're going to stay in us for a long time. How long, we don't know. Here's a quote from their document. Animal studies indicate serious health risks, including infertility, immune dysregulation, accelerated aging, dysregulation of genes associated with cholesterol synthesis, insulin regulation, cell signaling, and protein formation, changes in the liver, kidney, spleen, and gastrointestinal systems. This comes from the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. So I know some of you sitting right in front of me are having gastrointestinal problems, right? One of the things you might look at is how much GM foods you're putting into your system. Another thing we need to worry about is, what are the impacts of GMOs on the environment? Since over 80% of all GMOs grown worldwide are engineered for herbicide tolerance, as a result, the use of toxic herbicides like Roundup has increased 15 times since GMOs were introduced. GMO crops are also responsible for the emergence of superweeds and superbugs. which can only be killed if even more toxic poisons like 2,4-D, a major ingredient in Agent Orange, is used. So imagine we're creating these super weeds, and then the farmers go, oh, we need to kill the super weeds. And so then they use even more chemicals to kill the super weeds, and in the process getting that onto our food supply. GMOs are a direct extension of chemical agriculture and are developed and sold by the world's biggest chemical companies. The long-term impacts of GMOs are unknown, and once released into the environment, these novel organisms cannot be recalled. You know, another problem that this causes for the environment is what happens when you have an organic farmer next to a conventional farmer. You know, the conventional farmer's seeds are going to get blown over to the organic farmer seeds, causing more problems for those organic farmers. I mean, you want to hear how ridiculous these companies are being is they have patents on these seeds. They actually sued a farmer or an organic farmer because they found their GMO seeds on his farm, and they sued him for it. Meanwhile, they just got blown over because they came from another farm. These are the kind of things that these corporations are doing. So we also have to worry about the future of our organic foods, because if there are so many GMO foods in the environment, how are we going to control that? Another big thing is genetically modified crops have killed millions of bees. Okay? And if we don't have pollinators, how are we going to have food for the future? I don't know if you've noticed that the price of honey has gone up a lot. And that's because so many millions of bees have died as a result of these GMOs. You know, because they're not only killing, supposedly they only kill the animal, the bug that they're intended, the pest that they're intended to kill. But as we see, this is not the case. They're creating damage to humans, to other animals, to other insects. So, Monsanto's plans. You know, at a January 1999 biotech conference in San Francisco, Arthur Andersen, a company that consulted with Monsanto, described how they worked with the company. They asked the executives to describe their ideal future in 15 to 20 years. The executives then described a world in which 100% of all commercial seeds were genetically engineered and patented. Arthur Andersen Consultants then created the strategy and tactics designed to achieve it. So not only do they want to genetically engineer seeds, they want to patent them as well. So the problem is corporations like Monsanto are trying to gain control of the food supply by patenting seeds and using strong-arm tactics and lobbying to get them into wide-scale use. So what is the solution to all of this? Well, we've got to rely more on local agriculture. We have to start growing our own food, starting our own little gardens. I have a small plot of land back here, but in that small plot of land, I try to grow as many organic foods as I can, because that's the only way I know for sure what's happening, what kind of food I have. Shopping local, supporting legislation that requires labeling of GMOs, starting community gardens, reading the labels of what you buy. These are all ways that you can combat eating more GMO foods. Okay? Really trying to get our GMO foods labeled. You know, there are a lot of organizations out there that are trying to do this. Try helping them out. Maybe donating some money or try doing something. Tell your friends about this. I know this is a lot of information, and some of you are looking at me like, oh my goodness, or maybe you're bored, or maybe you're scared. I know I was a little bit of all of that when I was studying this. But the truth is, this is affecting all of us. And unless you move to one of those countries we just previously mentioned, you're stuck here. And we got to try to deal with this reality. So how do we avoid GMOs? Buy organic, which is not allowed, to be used in GM inputs. Buy products that are labeled non-GMO. Buy products listed on the non-GMO shopping guide. Read labels and avoid the high-risk ingredients that we spoke about earlier, such as soy protein, isolate, lecithin, high fructose corn syrup, which is in everything, dextrose, maltodextrin, and all corn derivatives, canola, and cottonseed oil. At www.nongmoshoppingguide.com, you'll find more information on how to avoid GM foods. I urge you to take a look at it. They have phone apps for it as well, so when you're shopping, they can help you figure out if it contains GM foods or not. Something I want to talk about and review with you is, in previous lectures I spoke a lot about organic foods, but I just want you to understand, for those of you who maybe are not so familiar with them, organic means that a food is made without any intervention from mankind or chemistry. Crops are grown separately from conventional crops using special soil, and farmers are not allowed to use any pesticides, non-natural fertilizers, or antibiotics. Buying organic is the only way to ensure that dangerous substances such as insecticides and herbicides are not present in produce. But know where your organic food is being produced. Some places, for example, I know there are some stores that will buy organic foods from China. And China's organic farming system is very questionable right now because they don't have the same regulations that we do in the U.S. So know where your organic food is being produced, because there are certain standards that need to be met to be labeled organic in the U.S., and if you're buying them from other countries, they might not be truly organic. Okay. So the 10 worst GMO foods for your that you should always buy organic is corn, soy, sugar and aspartame, rice, papayas, canola, also known as rapeseed, and cotton oil, tomatoes, dairy, all dairy products, zucchini, and yellow squash. These are definitely the ones that are the worst. And if you can't afford buying all organic, at least buy these organic. And stop eating food that comes out of boxes, because that is all GMO. To help you avoid GMOs, the Institute for Responsible Technology has this is the non-GMO shopping guide. Okay, so it's available as a booklet, a free iPhone app called Shop No GMO. All right, and you can take a look at it. And they really had this website was truly a font of a wealth of information it has, and I learned a lot to prepare for this lecture. What I want you to see on slide 73, hey, we're getting there, see? 73. All right, is our companies, when this battle in California was going on about Proposition 37, your right to know, labeling GMOs, there were a lot of people, a lot of companies who were fighting against GMO labeling. And those are all the companies you see in red and on the left of the red. Some of them are not going to, surprise you, Coca-Cola, Hershey's, but some of them are going to surprise you because some of them are companies that you probably buy from thinking they are, companies that don't use GMOs. Like Kashi was on there and Naked Juice and companies that I know I've used in the past that I really thought, were good companies that had ethics, which is hard to find nowadays in companies that just want to produce money. But there was a few there that I really felt disappointed by, and I chose to stop using because they don't want to support genetic labeling, genetically modified GMO labeling. The companies on the right in the green are companies that did support genetic GMO labeling. And you can see, look at the amount of money that the companies on the left spent. They spent $46 million in campaigns to fight against GMO labeling. And the companies on the right only were able to raise $9 million. So by a slim margin, California lost the right to know if their foods have GMOs. So if, I encourage you to take a look at these lists and try to buy responsibly, because every time we buy something, we make a vote. We vote for a company or not. We tell the companies, look, we want this. We want GMO labeling. If you continue to support these companies, you're just helping them to keep us in the dark, in ignorance. So how do we stop the genetic engineering of our food supply? Although GMOs are one of the most dangerous health and environmental risks we face, they are also one of the easiest of our major problems to solve. Unlike trans fats or sugar, GMOs don't offer any perceived consumer benefits. Furthermore, when consumers realize the health risks, they are highly motivated to choose brands without GMOs. Just a small percentage of the population switching to non-GMO brands will create a tipping point, forcing major food companies to quickly replace GM ingredients. If a bunch of people just stopped buying from these companies and demanded to have the foods labeled, that could be all it takes, right? This is what happened in Europe. At the end of April 1999, within a single week of protests and people talking out, virtually all major food companies committed to removing GMOs from their foods. 1 week. Okay? So you're better off eating McDonald's in France than you are in the United States. No, don't eat McDonald's anytime. But if you had to choose, the truth is GMO foods are not allowed in their food supply. Problem is U.S. awareness is low. How many of you knew what I just presented? Honestly, how many of you were aware of all of the risk factors and dangers? Okay, I see a few hands. Some of you weren't aware of it. And that is because, when people were asked, as far as you know, have you ever eaten genetically modified foods? 60% of people said no. 15% said don't know, and only 25% of people said yes. So unlike in Europe, mainstream press has not covered the GM issues in the U.S. And that's a whole other topic. We will not get into why the press has not covered this. But if you ask the average American, most people think they have not eaten GMOs. And after that presentation, you can see that it's everywhere. So, we already saw a tipping point in relation to genetically engineered bovine growth hormone, RBGH or RBST. In 2006, newspapers called it a tipping point or explosion in the industry. Since then, Walmart, Kroger, Starbucks, and about 58 of the top 100 dairies so far have removed it from their milk or dairy products. We see the same thing could soon happen with GM ingredients across the board. If enough people stand up to these companies, stop buying their products, we could do it here too. But we need to educate people. We need to tell our friends about this, our family members. We need to make a choice every time we go to the supermarket. Okay. So there's also what's called the Non-GMO Project. The Non-GMO Project is a nonprofit organization, and their mission is to protect the non-GMO food supply and give consumers an informed choice. They offer North America's only third-party verification for products produced according to rigorous best practices for GMO avoidance. Their strategy is to empower consumers to make change through the marketplace. If people stop buying GMOs, companies will stop using them and farmers will stop growing them. So when you see this verification, you'll see this on certain products, non-GMO, it'll say non-GMO, it's good to buy. Okay. And you can see this is a supermarket that had a whole display actually and showed, non-GMO project verified. So you know that this was something that you could feel confident in eating. So some resources for you, some homework. If you want to learn more about this, on slide 80, there are actually a whole bunch of movies that are out there. Genetic Roulette, I highly recommend it. You can watch it for free online right now. Seeds of Deception is excellent. The World According to Monsanto, and there's a few other ones. But I can say I've seen those, and they are quite eye-opening. And honestly, for anybody who wants to do serious work on themselves, spiritually, physically, in any way, we need to become more aware and educated. We need to take this message to people to help spread the word because, if we don't say anything, we're part of the problem. if we don't do anything, we are part of the problem. You know, the companies want us to sit quietly. They don't want us to talk about this kind of stuff because most people aren't aware of it. Another thing you can watch is this 3-disc set called the GMO Trilogy, Why Genetically Modified Organisms Threaten Your Health, the Environment, and Future Generations. Also, something good that I came across was GMO Myths and Truths, an evidence-based examination of the claims made for the safety and efficacy of genetically modified crops. This was printed in June 2012. You can find it online for free and read over it. So I want to urge you to think before you eat. Think before you eat. Don't just grab something because it tastes good. Don't grab something because you're hypnotized on the TV commercials and you think you want that. Think before you put something into your body. Know how it was produced. Know where it's coming from. Go to your local farmers markets. Talk to your farmers. Go to the farms. Make an effort, because without that effort, you're creating your own experiment within your own body. You know, my husband, he's always laughed at me saying, oh, please, genetically modified, blah, 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 organic this, organic that. I hope he now understands why. On slide 84, no more fights about it. All right, on slide 84, this is a cute little thing I came across, something to test yourself with. So on the top, you start. Did it grow in the ground is the question. If you say yes, then the next question is it organic? If it says yes, it's healthy food. Go for it. Eat it. Okay, did it grow in the ground? Yes. Is it organic? No. Look for an organic alternative if possible. Starting at the top again. Did it grow in the ground? No. Is it sugar or corn syrup? Is sugar or corn syrup one of the first 5 ingredients? If the answer is yes, proceed with caution. It is probably genetically modified. Okay, did it grow on the ground? If you're on the no side, all right. Does it have a label? If it says no, is it meat, fish, dairy, or whole grains? No, stop. Go back to start. Don't even put it in your body. Okay, go back to start and try again. Did it grow in the ground? No. Does it have a label? Yes. Does the label have nutrition information? Yes. Can you recognize all of the ingredients? No. Go back to start. Okay? Can you recognize all of the ingredients? Yes. Is sugar or corn syrup one of the first 5 ingredients? Yes. Proceed with caution. Again, it's probably genetically modified. Okay, so for Matt, I think this would be great for you to carry in your wallet, okay? We'll print it out big time for you, because the truth of the matter is, it's as simple as this. It's thinking before you eat, okay? This is a really cute way. Even if you have kids, teach your kids using this graphic. Make your kids conscious of what they're putting into their bodies, okay? Because actually, you know, I was thinking about this, 1996. First genetically modified crops came into existence, right? So people who are now, 17 years old are that first generation. People who are in their teens, right, are the first generation. I know people who have children who have so many types of allergies where before this was not known. I know so many kids who are fighting early onset diabetes, which is one of the side effects in these trials. I know a lot of kids who are having really severe intestinal issues. Why? Because they're the first generation who are eating all this stuff. If you keep good food in your fridge, you will eat good food. Another thing, I'm going to bring him up again, my husband. I tell him, look, whatever I bring into this house is going to be good food. Do not bring in food that is not good into this house. When I send him out to the supermarket and he comes back with something that is not organic or something that is not up to par, I send him back. So they know him very well at the supermarket because he's constantly returning things. By now, he's figured it out. When I see things in the house, for example, he loves corn chips, tortilla chips. If they are not organic, he gets a lecture and needs to return them. So by now, he was very proud. The other day, I almost started to, get upset with him, and he said to me, "No, look, they're organic." So after 13 years, he's finally learned something. Good going. So if he can change, you can change, okay? You have the right to know if it's GMO. You have the right. Let's make it our right, because only then we need to stand up to say we have a right to choose what goes into our body. And I am proud to say I went through 86 slides, and nobody is sleeping currently. So this is very good. I'll take any questions you may have right now. Yes, sir.
So what we see really is that they're using food as a weapon against us.
Exactly.
That's really what's going on. You could say it's conspiracy or whatever, but actually, I don't remember who, but one of them said we will use food as a weapon.
Exactly.
So, and what they want to do is they want to stop us from reproducing because we are overpopulating.
Right.
So my question is and it's also tied in with their disgust and greed, which we all have, but how much of this is connected to our karma, being that this is the United States only where we're being just forced?
U.S. and Canada.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big, question goes to, how much of this is our karma? It is. It's a big part of our karma. We're in this is the Iron Age, this is Kali Yuga. We know this is a difficult time. But this is a big part of our karma. The fact that we're here and we're sort of being used as these guinea pigs is our karma. It's our country, right? It's country karma. And they are using this as a weapon. That's actually what made me so sad as I was preparing this lecture, is because, we have the two forces, right? We have the White Lodge, we have the Black Lodge, we have the good, we have the evil, right? Inside of us, outside of us. And like you said, we see the obvious ways they're battling against us, pornography, drugs, the internet, using these tools. We see that, right? But so many people don't see what's happening with the food supply, and they're doing it more subtly, right? And they're keeping us in the dark and not letting us see. And there's some of us who are awakening to this. And some of you who raised your hands and knew about this, that's great. You knew about it, right? We need to keep spreading that knowledge. So just like in these teachings, the reason we have this school is the same reason. Because so many people are asleep, and we're trying to wake up, right? We're trying to awaken to the truth of our own truth and the truth around us. Look, the truth is, guys, we have to kill our ego. The truth is we have to work with our sexual energy. But in order to do those two things, we need to be as healthy as possible, right? Because if you're sick, in bed, with intestinal problems, your gut is leaking, okay? How many pranayamas are you going to do? Exactly, which is part of their plan. So they're attacking us straight in our sexual organs, in the seed, in the core of who we are. So they're trying to stop us, not only physically, but spiritually. And this is a very diabolic plan. And they do it in the name of greed. But if we look at the bigger picture of what's really happening, it's happening with vaccines as well. It's happening on so many other levels. And we have to put a stop to it. We need to decide what's going to go into our bodies. My ultimate dream, you know what it is, right? I want my farm. I want to grow my own chickens and goats, which you're not going to eat. And I want to grow my own crops. Because honestly, we all can't do that. But really, when we did do that, when we lived that lifestyle, at least we knew what was going into our bodies. Yeah.
I know a couple of people here who love to eat goat, right?
Yep.
Love goat. You never see organic goat, organic lamb.
Yeah.
So those are basically GMOs.
Their feed. It's what are they feeding them?
So in the result of them eating GMO, they are GMO.
Right. So what's exactly, because it goes into their genes.
Now, what about halal? That's also going to be GMO.
Halal is the method of killing and raising, but it doesn't mean they're not feeding them GMOs. Exactly. So the best thing to do is to get grass-fed animals, because up to now, I don't know of genetically modified grass. Maybe that's their, next thing. But as of right now, right? Yeah, the Kentucky bluegrass, right? Yeah, exactly. So, the what? Right, but I'm talking about like the when they say grass-fed animals, they're not talking that they're corn-fed. That's corn finished, right? So what I'm saying is like, yeah, it could be the Kentucky bluegrass. Maybe that's the next thing. So really, the only way to truly know what we're eating is going on the farm, speaking to the farmers. That's why part of like going to farmers markets and knowing your farmers is really the key, right? There are places that you can actually go to the farms and pick up your own meat and do that. And maybe that's what we need to do. We need to create more of an effort. We've actually become quite lazy, right? We go to the supermarket around the corner. We don't know what they're doing. Honestly, we don't know. Right? We don't know. So that's the reality of where the times we're living in. We need to know this. We need to awaken to this because we want to fight against this. We're fighting against our own nature, right? We need to have more tools on our side. We need to have strength on our side. We need to have the energy to be able to do the work that we're all striving to do and to be as healthy as possible. Because my next lecture, when I do my next lecture, is going to be about all these illnesses. How do we, if we do get sick, what do we do? Because we know that that's a whole other story about the healthcare system and all that. So I don't know about you, but I can't afford to get sick. Literally, I can't afford to get sick. Okay, so by presenting this material, and if you haven't listened to the other Healthy Spirituality lectures, I encourage you to do it, because that's the whole point. Let's try and keep ourselves healthy. Let's try to make the best options so that we don't have to get to that inevitable spot. Look, we're going to get sick because of karma. It's true, right? But do we need to accelerate that? Do you know what I mean? Like, let's put the best stuff that we can. Let's work with our energy. Let's try to work with that and try to, postpone that. Let's not help them. When we pick up that junk food, when we pick up food that comes in a box, we're just accelerating our illnesses. Anything that comes in a box, guys, is not good for you. Let's just establish this, all right? I know it's convenient. Oh, pop it in the microwave and you got dinner. It's not good. The microwave's not good for you either. That's in a previous lecture. All right? I use my microwave as storage right now, and I don't miss it. When I first stopped using it, I thought I could never live without it. I'm like, I don't even use it anymore. I literally store my pots and pans in my microwave.
Dry out your sponges.
Yeah, exactly. I don't even use it for that anymore. So, any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering about the genetically modified cotton. Like, most of what I wear is cotton.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this stuff is pretty old, so maybe it's
Is it before 1996? Oh, then you're okay. Yeah.
if you wear cotton clothing, if that can somehow affect you.
It may be allergic reaction. Who knows? Maybe it could. That's why they sell like organic cotton now, even. Really expensive. So maybe you should go buy vintage clothes before 1996. There you go. Buy some cotton from before then. Yeah, but it could. I mean, some people, they have so many skin allergies. Maybe it is what they're putting on there. It's very plausible. Matt?
You talked about the media science. Did you on the issue of GMOs? Did your research reveal any particular causes of this?
Causes of what?
The media silence.
Well, the media silence is because if we look at who's controlling the media, it becomes really. Oh, that's a whole other lecture, Matt. Right? If we look at it, the truth is the people who are in charge of the media are controlling what we get, right? And that's just a whole power thing and a money thing too. And the truth is these big agricultures, they're paying off people left and right. Look, they paid the Canadian, government $1 million to keep quiet about. It's dirty business. Let's just say that. And so they're not telling us because the people who are in charge are saying not to say it. One of the things I did come across was this scientist. in England. I cut it out of my lecture because my lecture was first like 130 slides. So in order to make it shorter, I actually cut it out. But the UK wanted to do a study on genetically modified crops. And so they asked these, they put it out there, and scientists had to apply for this grant. And this one scientist who did do it, he started to do the studies, and when he came out with the results saying like all these health risks were involved, guess what happened to him? Well, no, he didn't die. He got fired. This was a very prominent scientist. I mean, a man who had 30 years of experience in his field, one of the leading experts. They fired him. They made it very difficult for him. They did put gag orders. They have ways of making people not talk. And so this scientist, if you go to the Institute for Responsible Technology, you can see his work there. And the media squashed it because they didn't want it out. But if people demand to know, like they did in Europe, then we're going to have to talk. Yep.
I just want to say a couple of things. Like, this lecture made me very angry.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
I really want to kill them.
Okay, that's not the response I was hoping for.
Reflecting on why I'm so angry, but I want to defend people.
Right.
It makes me sick to my stomach.
Okay, so great. So what could you do that? To help people?
To inform people.
Exactly.
And you can see that when you just look at Europe, and you look at the United States and Canada, we're huge countries where everyone is separated.
Right.
And we have free. Yeah, we're free.
Right.
We're young countries. We don't have a young group consciousness as strong as Europe because they have old countries. So
Right.
they stick together and they get things done.
It's true.
It's not going to happen here.
Right.
The only thing that's going to happen is they need violence. In my
Okay, no, that's not what we're going for. Activism. We're looking for activism.
Now, and another thing is milk now.
Yeah.
I just saw this. What they're
Yes.
the FDA
Aspartame.
pushing to put aspartame
Yeah,
in
I know.
milk.
Yeah.
And aspartame is actually rat feces.
Yeah. Well, it's actually all the chemicals, and it's genetically modified. And why do we need that in our milk? Yeah,
This is the FDA pushing for it.
I know. Because as we saw the penguins, right? Who's really regulating this food?
to prevent diabetes.
Right. But meanwhile, raw milk, they'll go in and they'll do, a secret, mission to get the guy who's selling the raw milk. It's backwards. I know.
Website and read about raw
Yeah.
milk, and they just completely were just saying how bad it is.
Right. But aspartame in your milk is okay. Yeah.
Really makes me angry.
I know. That was my initial reaction, anger. And then I went through sadness, and then I went through, okay, what am I going to do about it? And that's really the question. If this is making you angry, good, but use that anger in a positive way to make people know about it. The more people that wake up to this, the more power we're going to have. If we don't say anything and we leave this lecture and we leave this like, oh yeah, that was an okay lecture, or yeah, that was interesting, and we do nothing about it, we're continuing to sleep. We're continuing to be the sheep they want us to be. And we'll continue to be manipulated. Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what you were saying. It does make me angry to know that corporations like Monsanto are doing this, but I feel that Monsanto is just a materialization of this sort of collective ignorance or disrespect that I think we all have towards nature. Because I just moved here not too long ago from Austin, and I live actually in Astoria. And last night, and I've noticed this before, just walking down the street, we consider New York City to be like this great city in the United States, but I'm walking down the street last night and there's virtually garbage all over the place because for some reason in Astoria, depending on what kind of street you live on, people still put their trash out on the side of the street. So if you get a good gust of wind coming and it rips it all apart, there's garbage everywhere.
Yeah.
And people walk through it like it's no big deal. I mean, either they become just so used to it, they lost this sort of respect for the environment they live in.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
even if you're growing your own food in the city, it still makes me wonder what's going in it, just given the garbage and runoff from rain. And all
true.
of that. So it's like we've created this environment that we're living in, and Monsanto is sort of this materialization of what we've done, and now we're horrified by it, and
Yeah.
we're sort of, I don't know if it's so much us versus them as we're sort of all part of this. We've all created this horror that we're just starting to see through things like Monsanto.
Right.
And what they're creating.
It's a reflection of what we have inside, for sure. And that's what Carl was saying about our karma, too. We're all paying the price for this. For whatever reason, we're all in this now. But, we can change it, too. Just like saying, I have these egos inside of me. Oh, I'm just going to accept it. No, we have to fight against it, right? We have to fight against our own ugliness. And the only way we can change is if we start with ourselves. My favorite quote, if you know me well, you know what my favorite quote probably is Gandhi. Be the change you wish to see in the world, right? And it's true. We got to start with ourselves. It's the only person we can start with. I can't force Monsanto to do what I want. I can't force you to do what I want. I can't even force my husband to do what I want sometimes, although I do try hard. And the truth is, I can only change myself, right? But imagine if each of us took that responsibility. If just the people in this room, if we seriously changed, really dedicated ourselves even harder than we are right now to change, what effect could we do? What effect could we have? Truly, it's an awesome question because each of us has the ability inside of us. We all have these divine beings inside of us. What if we let those shine? Look at what Jesus did. He was one man, right? Look at Muhammad or Buddha. It's one person. We all have that light inside, and that's what we're all here for, to try to find that light, to make it bigger and to make it shine. Each of us has it. But what happens is, if we eat this type of food, if we live in this society and we continue to sleep, it's like a sleep. I feel like every once in a while you awaken and you're like, oh my God, where are we living, right? And then you're like, but I'm a part of this craziness. I'm a part of what, but I want to fight against it too. I want to help people to see that there's a better way. Okay, let's work together. Maybe it's not all about money. You ever look at some of the richest people? Some of them are not very happy. Or they're looking for more money. So obviously money's not the answer if you're always looking for more money. So something's wrong, and it's a lot of things wrong. And we know that. But that's our karma, right? Yes, sir. Oh, yes. You have a throat problem back there? Okay. Go ahead. Are non-GMO foods more expensive? That depends on where you're buying them. It depends on what you're buying. This is how I like to look at it. What's more expensive? Having holes in your gut or severe allergies or spending an extra 50 cents on something? Sometimes we think that extra 50 cents or $1 for the organic product is too much. But if we don't buy it, how much is it going to cost us in the end? So even if it is a little more expensive, buy it. I've seen non-GMO stuff that's not that expensive. I make it like a priority. When I budget my money is budgeted to buy good product. I don't drink, I don't party, I don't do any of that stuff. So my money goes to good food because I'm figuring I'm investing in myself and in the health of my family. So you just got to figure out what your priorities are, honestly. If you can afford to buy some of the things that we buy that we waste our money on, we can buy a new iPhone for $700. You can buy non-GMO foods.
What's the state of the soil in North America? Are the pastures untouched by chemicals and altered plants in the past?
Or what? The last part?
Are pure pastures the thing in the past?
Well, unfortunately, pure pastures, I think those are probably more the exception than the norm because of just, you brought up a good point, the rain, acid rain, fracking, that's a whole other lecture too, the quality of our water, fracking, that's polluting many fields and water systems. The truth is that finding pure fields is probably harder and harder. There are people who do dedicate their lives to organic farming and really try hard to maintain standards, high standards. But I'd probably say in North America, we're outnumbered by conventional farming.
How do we know if food is grafted? Most organic, biodynamic, and so-called spiritual farmers think that grafting is okay.
Well, grafting, there's a lecture that I did on grafting under the Healthy Spirituality series under organics. So I would urge them to listen to that lecture. Mm-hmm.
One commenter says, our grocery bill is our health insurance.
Good comment. Our grocery bill is our health insurance. Yeah, I like that. Good. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say, there is a way, with produce at least, if it's labeled with a 9, like, how you see conventional is a 4,
Yeah.
organic, I think, is a 8, and GMO has
No,
a 9.
organic is a 9 and GMO is an 8. But, I'm sorry. A student was saying that there is a way of knowing on produce that organic products are labeled with a 9. They start with a 9 on the PLU code, and conventional could be like whatever number, but GMOs supposedly are an 8, but they don't have to be labeled. That's what you need to understand. So we don't know. Yes, that 9, when you see it, that should tell us it's organic, right? But they don't have to label the 8s. There's no law that says they have to. And have you ever seen an 8? I've never seen an 8 either. And I have looked, but nobody's going to put that 8 because they don't have to put the 8.
Unless it's something like a non-GMO project getting involved in.
Yeah, but there's no laws in New York that say they have to label it. So, yeah, that works some of the time. Yeah. You good back there? All right, any other questions? All right, well, I hope, yes.
Okay, we're talking about North America, but South America, we see more and more stuff being imported from South America.
Yeah.
Would that be a way in which you can look at hoping that the stuff is organic?
Yeah, if the stuff says, well, it's not all organic coming from South America. There's conventional farming, right? But if it's coming into the U.S., supposedly, and it's labeled organic, supposedly it goes through the FDA has this system of, but again, how much do you rely on that? I don't know. As far as non-GMO, if it's coming in from those countries we spoke about, then it should be non-GMO. Not necessarily organic, because it could still be conventional, right? So, I buy food sometimes from, some produce from other countries too. It says organic, but if it's, like I said, if it's from China, just be wary because they have uncovered lots of issues related to there. And I'm sure there are other countries too. But, something I wanted to raise, something I saw that was very heartwarming, actually. Here's some hope. Did you hear about Bhutan wanting to be the first organic country? They only want to have organic foods. So I say we all move to Bhutan and, start a nice retreat center there. Okay, we'll start a collection today, Bhutan retreat. All right, so that's the first country I've heard that's wanted to go all organic. So there's some hope. That's very, promising to hear that. So, yes.
On the foods coming in from like South America, isn't there like this other problem where I'm talking about the conventional stuff where it's not GMO, but maybe they use like a really lot of pesticides.
Exactly.
I don't know because it's not the same.
Right. That's why your best bet is try to do organic, even if it's coming from other countries. And there's always that little devil inside of me that says, how do you know it's organic, right? Right? Do you hear that little devil like, why are you spending $5.99 a pound? Are you sure it's organic, right? And my husband always says that to me too. How do you know it's organic? And I go, well, I hope it's organic. The best I could do at this point is I hope it is. I hope the people who are selling it as organic, are doing it. I prefer to go to the farmers markets. I prefer to see the people who are growing my food. I figure they'll lie to me less in the face than if I, in the supermarket, no one has to. It's just there. But, I hope there are good people who still do this kind of stuff. And, hopefully one day I'll be able to grow some more of my stuff. But we don't live in the perfect world, and we have to make do with the world that we're in right now. And that's the whole point of this lecture is how do we live in a world that has gone a little crazy? And that craziness is inside and outside. So let's try our best and, let's be active and let's teach other people about what we learned today. And if you already know this, great. But how many people have you taught it to? As a result of doing this lecture, I'm telling my friends, like, oh my God, I have to sit down and talk to you. I'm doing this like, I know why your wife is sick. I know why come, let's sit down. So I'm totally more motivated to teach more people about this. And hopefully somebody has learned a few things that they can change in their life in order to be healthier. So yes. Yeah. Right. Well, we did that in the proteins lecture in Healthy Spirituality. So if you want to learn more about farm raised, go there. If you have questions about your seafood quality, go to Monterey Bay Aquarium. They have a guide to, which foods are better for you to eat, farmed or wild. So just go to Monterey Bay Aquarium, the Seafood Watch it's called, and you can see which fish, they update it constantly, which fish are better to eat than others for you. But remember what your homework is. Who remembers what their homework is? Sign the petition. So you have two homeworks. I lied. I told you only had one. One is sign the petition to stop GE salmon, and two is tell at least one other person what you learned about today. At least one. That one person, can tell somebody else, and little by little we can help educate people. These slides will all be available on our website, gnosticradio.org. I also encourage you to watch those movies and go to the Institute for Responsible for Technology. They actually have a whole bunch of PowerPoint presentations already done. I took a few slides from their slides. They want to encourage people to do these kind of talks in their neighborhoods, in their communities. So if you feel passionate about it, you want to teach others, there's even like a way they teach you how to talk about it. So I encourage you to do it. Thank you for your time, and try to choose some good foods to put in your mouth. Think before you eat. Okay? Thank you. The presentation of this lecture was made possible by donations from listeners like you. Will you help others to benefit from this knowledge? Most Gnostic schools recommend a donation of $10 to $20 per lecture. Every single donation helps. Make a donation now at gnosticradio.org. For questions and deeper understanding of this lecture, we invite you to explore the books published by Glorian Publishing and available from booksellers worldwide. Visit gnosticbooks.org to learn more. Thank you. May all beings be happy.